Hi, I'm Dennis Michael Lynch, filling in for Steve today on the Steve Malzberg Show. Joining me now is Bristol County, Massachusetts Sheriff Tom Hodgson and Rockingham County, North Carolina Sheriff Sam Page. Thank you both for joining me. I'm going to start with you, Sam. Quick question. Background checks. If you were to do a typical background check, how long would it take you?
Usually at the sheriff's office, about 1 to 2 weeks.
1 to 2 weeks. If I said that you had to do background checks on illegal aliens in order to give them work permits and part of an amnesty from the President of the United States, how long would you want for that sort of background check?
Well, I would say as long as it takes to validate who that person is or isn't.
Well, give me a time frame if you had to throw something out.
Well, if it takes 1 to 2 weeks to do a background check on someone from the United States who should have a valid United States, some type of identification card, government ID, and then you're talking about someone who doesn't from a foreign country, I would think that it would probably take many more days.
Okay, so if you were to do that background check, would that also include what that person has done in terms of any crime or work history in their home country, or is it just going to cover the United States?
We primarily do checks, what's called through the Secure Communities Program. When we encounter someone that's not native born to the United States in our jails, we run them through Secure Communities, which is a print check against the national and the immigration print database.
And how long does that take?
Well, usually it can take about 20 minutes to get a hit back if they have had the person in the system before. But sometimes people have come through, have been arrested in our communities who's never been picked up by immigrations before. So you wouldn't have any record of them.
Wow. So then let me ask you the bigger question. If the president does indeed give amnesty, you know he's going to promise that there's going to be background checks on all these people. How are we going to do background checks on 4, 5, or 10 million people?
Well, I don't think we have enough people with immigrations or Border Patrol to do that action. And with the restrictions that's placed on immigration agents right now in the interior, I still don't think we have enough personnel to dedicate to that and to continue to secure our borders and to enforce our immigration laws.
So do you think at the end of the day we're just going to be rubber stamping these work permits and handing over identification to people and not really know who they are? I mean, what's the danger in something like that?
Well, the danger to letting someone come into the country and trying to identify her, if you don't do a thorough job, you don't know who's coming in your country. Could be a terrorist, could be a cartel member, could be a gang member, could be anybody, you don't know.
It sounds very expensive. I'm going to move over to you now, Tom. Question for you is, how much of your resources in your sheriff's department is allocated to having to deal with illegal immigrants?
Well, I built an immigration detention facility in Bristol County after I became the sheriff. So I have a staff that it's devoted to doing that. We also have, of course, staff that have to process people. So it's difficult to say exactly how many when you compare it to the staffing of that facility versus people that are brought in our processing center. We have to process through for secure communities and work with ICE on trying to identify who they are.
But the costs have to be astronomical, no?
Well, sure. I mean, look, you just raised an excellent point when you spoke to Sheriff Page about this. This whole issue of not checking people, we wouldn't allow anybody to come into any sheriff's office or to any business, for that matter, without knowing who the people are. I mean, you could be inviting somebody who's got a background with fraud in a private company, and they could rip you off in a matter of weeks by not making sure you have a proper check. Why would we do that to the people of our country and say that people can come in here without the proper background checks? It makes absolutely no sense.
You know, a lot of
American and every legal resident.
A lot of times when we speak about illegal aliens and the impact they have on the country, I mean, we'll talk about jobs and we talk about the potential for terror, and obviously the health concerns of all the diseases that are coming through the border, especially at the last surge. I mean, now that we hear amnesty, the words coming from the president again, we know we're going to see another surge. Sam, back to you. You know, you're in North Carolina. I mean, what's the devastation that this is all taking on your community, both now and what you think will happen if an amnesty is given?
Well, you know, I approach things from the public safety perspective, and I go back to what Tom said. When we don't know who's coming into our country, how can we control identifying persons that may have the intent to do harmful acts or criminal acts in our community? The other thing is, if you want to talk about the economics, I understand that I think it was this past year, that it cost about almost $2 billion in North Carolina to taxpayers for paying benefits for persons that are in North Carolina illegally. We estimate over 410,000 estimated undocumented illegal persons living in North Carolina.
Wow. Well, I want to make sure I get this in before we wrap up here. Tom, you are spearheading, along with Sam, a whole rally down in Washington, D.C. on December 10th with all the sheriffs. Give me a little taste of what that's about.
Well, what it's about is, look, there can be no comprehensive, legitimate immigration reform until these borders are secured. And frankly, the sheriffs in this country and law enforcement are tired of being marginalized and being asked to turn our backs on the law by the President of the United States. When you have a president telling people, look, I don't respect the immigration laws and I don't think you should either, that begins a license to say whether they're Americans or legal residents or illegals, hey, look, I don't particularly like this other law, and if the president feels that it's okay not to obey one, why should I bother obeying these other laws? And frankly, what's going on is we have a situation where the sheriffs of this country have always been looked at, I think, over history as the one elected office where people don't see us as Democrat, Republican, partisan people, but rather people that are the standard bearers of their public safety.
Tom, let me ask you a question. If somebody wants to find out, where would they go?
Well,
Got to wrap it up. You know what, Tom? I'll tell you what, Tom. We'll put it up on the screen. Okay. DMLdaily.com. They could go there. I'll have it up for you. We'll be back with Newsmax contributor and host of The Right Side on Newsmax TV, Armstrong Williams, after the break. But first, here is your Max to Health moment about the benefits of yoga.
We all have had our own perceptions about yoga. For some, it sounds hippie-ish or something their kid would do, but to others, it's a way of life. Perceptions are not reality, and yoga, no matter what your age, has many medical benefits.
You're never too old to start yoga. It's better to start now than to never start at all. And when you start now and you start to gain your practice, you'll become more comfortable when you start doing your yoga practice, and you'll find your path. So there's all different types of yoga, and whatever you're looking for, whether it's gaining flexibility, to de-stressing, to moving from a centered place, or even gaining muscle tone. There's so many benefits to it.
Go at your own pace. Yoga can be done in a comfortable sitting position, standing up, or lying down. With the slow, gentle movements of yoga, you're able to stimulate and relax every part of the body and alleviate muscle and joint pain. There are also poses designed to improve your digestive system.